and we are off and running. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you to hit infographics. Go for it.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who I don't know, I am Dr. Heather Henrichs. I'm a professor in the Arts and Sciences division. And today I want to talk about how to use infographics and hopefully successfully to kind of really get students engaged and ignited into some deeper learning. And so one thing for sure before we kind of embark on this is I would want you to have a secondary device. I do want you guys to have your iPads on hand. I am going to have you navigate to some stuff on your iPads because I think there's a couple of good resources you guys should maybe grab and download so you can then be moving forward and trying to do this. So I would encourage that you do have your iPad readily available with you so you're able to do that and participate. So what we kind of want to work on and accomplish today is first, I just really want to talk like, what are the benefits of using infographics and maybe how would we distinguish infographics differently from some other things like let's say sketch notes or let's say concept mapping. There's a little overlapping with both of those, but let's maybe talk and explore a little with that. And then I want to, with anything and having it be something new that you're trying as either a pedagogical approach or a classroom assessment, time is of the essence. I love to be able to work smarter, not harder. I want to provide you some easy ways that you can not only kind of role model, produce, and curate content towards students, but show them how to role model, produce, and curate content towards each other. So the last objective really is the idea. My ultimate goal would be that you do leave from today, you create something yourself, and you do turn around and you share it with me. That you're going to be at that type of level that you're like, oh, I think I can do this. So first, let's really kind of like, why infographics? And so there's actually some good information and research and data with this. But ultimately, I really loved this resource that I had found from a e-learning digital, a Sage Journal article. This actually meets like our arts and science division just went through this self-study and we talked a ton about this idea of soft skills and what is a future employer looking for, right? And they are starting to look and pivot more towards, they don't want them just to be great critical thinkers. They want them to be critical thinkers who are good at digital literacy, who are good at information literacy, and they're good at creativity first and foremost. So I think that's one very pivotally strong argument. It's not just to get at the critical thinking, but even show them a pathway of how this becomes a career readiness skill set for them. So with that, what are just some like easy, quick benefits? And this is a short list. There is all kinds of things and reasons and resources. I actually, while I talk, I would like you guys to go to the chat feed and tell me what's a reason you would use an infographic, something different other than what I have here. What is a reason you would use an infographic? Or what's a reason you actually like an infographic? Because here's the reality that when we are consuming media ourselves, we are actually consuming infographics constantly. We're consuming that type of product all the time, whether it be on, let's say, popular social media, such as Facebook, such as Instagram, even TikTok. Like we are constantly consuming it ourselves. So again, what are reasons other than what I have for why you would want to use it? What would be reasons you like it yourself? So things that I want to address, and then we'll see kind of where you guys are at, is you really can activate the full scale of VARK learning strategies. So that acronym of being visual, auditory, a read, write, and kinesthetic, I'm going to show you a way today you can actually utilize that to activate all of those things. Then even when I put out to mark like, why do this as a lunch and learn? Students want it. They want a quick, efficient path forward. They want something that provides them information that they can utilize in a summary format and something that they feel graphically maps their mind to improve that retention. So I think those are strong arguments of if they're asking for it because they're recognizing they're consuming it themselves, that we want to kind of meet them where they're at. So things that other people like, Ava loves that it gives it visual Spencer's the same, that visual component. And Lori, I love that you're even like saying, yeah, formative assessment, and really just that focus component to it too. I like that also. Gina, yes, absolutely. That they're not like, we do a lot of papers, or even just from a PowerPoint style. And that tends to, especially with this generation, kind of be not super exciting for them, right? We do want them to be excited about their learning. And so I think this is a pivotal way to kind of just infuse small elements of that. So this has a lot of foundation with it too. This kind of taking the concept of an infographic and bringing now a technology or a digital aspect to it to create these. So even in the late 90s, this Mayer's model of multimedia learning. And I will share my presentation at the end. It has links with all of these resources, so you could read them yourself and kind of follow up on them. But even this nice little graphic that I found myself by resourcing that summarizes, what is, again, this value here of having a good multimedia presentation. So I want us to kind of, do some distinguishing language. So when we say a concept map oftentimes is going to be full more of words, right? Words just organized into a format that seems palatable to be able to consume those words. When we say maybe like a sketch note, right? Our students, especially since we've done this one-to-one initiative, they're sketch noting more often now than they're actually just note taking, if you start to pay attention to it. So like that sketch note concept is that they're now layering in a little bit of color, right? A little bit of creativity, maybe even a little bit of script handwriting, dare I say. That's very popular with this generation. They're layering that into their note taking. Then when we think about an infographic, well, where does that land? It's obviously piecing together, well, we want the text, but we want the visualization. And what I want to show you today is you can actually take it a step further and place that multimedia aspect into that presentation for them. Give them that little bit of extra beyond when you even kind of think about how you would approach this. So when we kind of want to try something new, it's like, oh, I really want to do that. It sounds fantastic, but I need it to be easy for me to try. I need it to be palatable. Students feel the same. So if you're going to confront them with, hey, I really think we should try this out. I learned this and it seems absolutely fantastic. Then you better have a good, strong way to role model through using that type of pedagogical approach or using this as a formative assessment. So I definitely want to give a little guidance for you so you can move forward in that way. And so with my students, here's how I embed this into my teaching is in, let's say, a pathophysiology course. I would start at the beginning of a term and be doing things that are concept maps. They're very organized chart concept maps, taking text and placing it into boxes, right? Getting them to start thinking in those types of ways. Then I slowly layer in demonstrating physically to them, maybe a little bit more of some sketch noting with it, where I'm going to add a little color, I'm going to add a little creativity. I'm then maybe going to blend together some concept mapping that does both. But ultimately, I'm going to be landing towards a product of an infographic. And I actually choose to use intelligent agents, and I will embed additional infographics that I've curated with content from either other sites, things that I've made, things that past students have made. And so if students are clicking into certain content, sometimes they're going to get that extra element with it. So I want everybody on your own devices right now, on your iPad, I want you to navigate to that Apple education site. So education.apple.com. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up over here on my side too. And so you can follow along with me on your own. Again, go to that education.apple.com because there really is some fantastic resources out here that are going to be able to give you a framework to go off of. When you then turn around and charge students with, guess what? I have now role modeled to you. I need you now to create for me. So when you go here into this Apple Education, and many of us have maybe done our Apple Teacher Certificate, I want you to explore a little bit further your Apple Teacher portfolio elements here. So you have that Apple Teacher Journey stuff where you're just starting to kind of find the information, lots of foundational skills, and then you have even some lesson integration stuff. Let's go ahead and click towards that. That lesson integration brings you over to this Apple Teacher portfolio. This is really taking your skill set from like Apple Teacher, where you just learn the basics of how to navigate all those apps, into giving you a way to actually see demonstration and examples. So I want everybody to click over to the one where it says the Activate Examples. So on your own device, I want you to navigate with me and go to those Activate Examples. There's two in here that I want to draw your attention to that relate really well to what we're talking about today. And so when you navigate over to each of these, it's going to give you some examples of activities to go ahead and try. The first one I want us to go to here is to how to create a quick sketch, right? Because the first comment, the first time I was like, hey students, I think I want you to create the infographic now. I received the feedback, well, I mean, I can't draw. How do I do this? I don't think I have nice handwriting. It was all these things where they felt stymied by the idea that they thought they couldn't create themselves. So if you guys scroll down here underneath this, this is one of the resources that I want you to grab. Everybody click right here to that Everyone Can Create Drawing Guide. And I want you to be sure that you go ahead and get that and place that onto your own device. Because yes, we have this iPad and we have this Apple Pencil, but this Everyone Can Create Drawing Guide is actually going to give that comfort to the students to say, hey, guess what? You don't need to be an art major. That is not what I'm asking of you. I'm just purely asking of you to give creativity and innovation to this visual presentation. And so this gives them a fantastic kind of framework to follow off of. The other tip right now I would want you to write down is when you are on that device, students easily, and I shared this tip with Mark when we were doing something else, is encourage them to go to free clip arts. And you give them this one fantastic tip: go buy clear sticky notes. Stick them on top of the screen of that iPad, turn around, draw, and recreate with that. It'll feel just like they're writing on paper, and those clear sticky notes easily allows them to be able to literally draw themselves. So everybody be sure you grab that. The other resource I want you to go to is, let's go back to this Activate kind of area where it has these activities. And the next thing I want you to go to is where it says use a graphic organizer. Graphic organizers is kind of another way of that blend between, but it's actually like physically assigning students a information gather activity, right? So it shows you, and this would be great for lab or clinical, it shows you an example that is obviously elementary level, but engaging your senses when you're reflectively thinking about a beach experience. But what I want you to do is underneath this, there's another fantastic resource. I want you guys to go ahead and click and download that graphic organizer template for Pages. This is going to give you a nice way, and the students navigate them directly to this when they're telling you, well, I don't feel like I have the time, or I don't use that application that much, and I don't know how to add all those different objects. The beauty of this guide is it actually gives them some templates they can import right away to be able to use. So that is some key things that I hope all of you have grabbed and captured on your own devices to be able to utilize yourselves. Because again, we do need it to be easy when we're trying things, and we need to have answers to students who also want their time to be utilized well. So when we do think about it, let's also explore on your own devices right now. So when you downloaded those materials, you would have had Pages that would have populated for one of them. I want everybody to go and find and now download what's called Freeform. If you don't already have that, this is actually one of the newer applications that has come out from being the Apple Suite applications. And again, many of these products mirror themselves, right? It's not that you have to be married to using the Apple applications, but I think there's value added when you are with some of them. And that's that ease of the airdrop. It's that ease of the collaboration with it. It's that ease of dissemination as a faculty to know that you could have a uniform eye on students as they're doing things by you maybe even having this bird's eye view of them through, let's say, like an Apple Classroom. It's a nice way for you to create that learning uniformity. So freeform, that may be a new one to some of you. We just recently had our Apple Professional Learning Specialist on campus who kind of talked to people about that one briefly, but what freeform does that is a little different than some of the other ones is it does give you kind of, again, that endless space where they can add sticky notes, they can do this initial drafting. So you're charging them with, hey, I want you to create an infographic. You need to get them into first like a brainstorming phase and a researching phase. This is a nice place to go to encourage that with the students. You could easily be able to utilize, let's say, Notability, which is becoming very digitally native to our students as well. You could easily have that request of them, and I'll show you some tips here with that one as well. But then now that you've imported those templates with pages, you can easily navigate them over to that one, or Keynote would be the last application. And here's an example, like I created my presentation I'm showing you today out in Canva because I think it gives a lot of good graphic visualizations, but you can easily bring those types of products over into that Apple product as well. So it's not that they have to isolatedly exist with each other. So some tips of things, because some of us have also learned, used, or talked about Microsoft Whiteboard. So let's talk parallel products. So if you already are using something and you're like, gosh, I don't want to change a workflow, freeform, parallel would be Microsoft Whiteboard. So my tip with you with that one is, again, encourage the students to actually explore a little bit more that little plus button there for create. I think they naturally just navigate to the whiteboard. They naturally will just draw, but they maybe don't explore as much over here to add the shapes, add the templates. And there's actually a ton of templates that exist out on that whiteboard. And the other key thing is get them sharing those links so that they are actually now collaborating. So a lot of times, again, in my teaching strategy, I role model initially all of these things. Then I start to do slowly think, pair, share, then build into groups so that they have an expectation that it can't just be an individually learned skill. That's that goal of we want them to recognize this could provide them career readiness. Another tip I would have is, again, Notability. Notability is a great product. Many of our students are completely at the point where this is becoming very, very routine for them. I think if you asked an average student on our campus now, this is probably the application they navigate to the most. But I would say, here's where, again, I think they're not totally capturing all of the uses. They're pretty comfortable with the draw tools. Many of them are very into hand lettering, and that's where they're creating beautiful script and colorized text to go into those notes. But encourage over to that three little ellipse that's right by the plus. So they start to actually engage more with the media component of it. Stickies is a great thing. They could easily grab and create themselves an infographic template and do the drawing and add images in with it and have a structure by just taking those two things together. So definitely encourage those types of things. So before I kind of navigate further and talk about design, I think, Mark, did you have something with Whiteboard maybe to add, or one of those other applications?
Yeah, I was just going to ask and pause for just a second. Whiteboard's kind of back. So those of you that tried it before and it wasn't working, Microsoft has sorted out some of the things. The hospital sorted out some things. So Whiteboard seems to be working again. But I also wanted to pause for just a second and see, were there any questions along those lines?
Yeah, same thing. That's why I was at.
Perfect.
This is Lori. I have a question. when you navigated to the media through those 3 buttons, when I navigate there, I don't get a media window. I just get the options window.
I actually think that might be the plus that you were looking at and just got a wrong circle there.
Oh, whoops. I did. I circled wrong, Lori. I apologize. It is the plus. I was off.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep, it's
Okay.
the plus. I apologize. The options
Thank
does
you.
give them templates, Lori. So I just had one
Yeah.
of my circles off. You'll hit the plus for media. You'll hit the 3 ellipses for options. And there is even some templates in Notability, Lori.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
Are there any good templates in, this is going to sound really bad. Are there good templates there? Like I'm going through and there's a lot of things like calendars or music staves, things like that, but I don't see a lot for like creating a study guide.
I think it's again thinking outside of the box, because with some of those, I feel like you do have to do a little manipulation with some of them, Seth, to be able to do it. But let's say like even a calendar could become a study guide in itself, actually, because you could be taking like what each of the key, and I'll use an example, each of the key disease topics are, and you could have them place like the pathology term and one picture with it and hyperlink behind that. So every click to the calendar would end up going to maybe a video, a research journal, an article, a Quizlet. So it's thinking kind of creativity about it and how you can innovate a little bit differently with it. And I'll show you, I got some more tips too of some other kind of places you can go to actually get those types of things too, Seth, without having to only stay within these applications. I got some other good stuff too.
One other one, quick one, I'll jump in. You can actually build your own templates as well. So there's lots of music templates and sporting templates and everything else. So if you want to build one and save it as a template, you certainly can.
And then Jill noticed that it has the tape. Yes, Jill, there is the tape in Notability, so you can quiz yourself. I have been coaching lots of students with that to try to use those things, because they can actually then do reveals on their own notes that they have been taking, even aside from creating as an infographic, that they can do those things. Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, well, so we have to talk about what I think is like now the fun part. That was like the background part of, hey, why should we use this as a pedagogical approach or a formative assessment? What is the value in it? To, hey, what's the ease? How do I do this with ease? What are some applications for me to do that? Let's maybe dive further though and talk about like actually design, because this is again where you do have to get the students to recognize they're much more creative than they think they are, and how to, again, get to that level and use it in a way that it's going to be meaningful, because you want to use metacognition with this. I would say if you're going to charge students with, hey, I want you to create an infographic, they're going to want to think deeper about their own thinking if they get choice, freedom, and creativity. So you want to be sure that you're providing some of those things. They're going to make deeper connections if they feel that those types of things have been provided to them. So I found a fantastic, and I think this is actually literally off of a graphic design site, but when I share my presentation, you can click here and get to it. But here's a great infographic they made. What are some of the main types and what do these look like for how to visualize this information? And so when I share that at the end, you guys can go ahead and navigate to those 10 most commons. And I'll go ahead and show just quickly on my side with that, because this gives a fantastic look. Like, let's say I just want something that's information based. I want to blend in some statistics, but I want it to make it seem interesting. I saw this one and it made me think of a student submission that I've already gotten that was about urine output and what that would look like with different urology presentations. And I thought, oh, look at that. They could do coffee cups and colors with it and talk about how many cups. Then things like, well, what about showing them maybe that mind mapping where it's going to go around a central topic and give them a little bit of graphic with that central topic. Timeline stuff is very useful, especially let's say if you were thinking into teaching in more of a historical aspect. I was even thinking myself like, gosh, that would have been useful. I should have been doing a timeline with like, let's say pharmacology, drug laws. Students probably would have found that dry material more interesting if they would have seen it like that. Venn diagramming. This is a huge one I do naturally in my teaching all the time, where you're getting them to try to see comparison and overlap. So they do establish that contrasting type of thinking and comparison thinking. Mapping, obviously, we're thinking a lot about social determinants of health and going that direction of thinking holistically. So mapping could become something that was very useful, especially when we're thinking of this nursing division and you guys are having to go through that BSN essentials and maybe think differently about some stuff. Statistical things is obviously a nice way to give them that consumption of, well, where did this information fall? I think of April with this, with her statistics and research course, that students maybe go a little bit further than, let's say, just making a graph off of Excel, which we've all done, right? Trying to make it seem somewhat more interesting with it. And then maybe those flow charts with those lift-offs. And when I think of one like this, I'll do some of these too. This is sometimes where I'll do a flow chart for, hey, here's what I'm expecting you study this week. And maybe each of the buttons on the flow is actually a hyperlink to the video content. So I'm oftentimes even sharing to students not just physical concepts, but things that I want them studying. They're more engaged in doing the follow through if I give that to them. Hierarchy, food pyramid. I'm actually teaching a nutrition class right now, so this is obviously applicable. But if you recall, we even changed from a pyramid to a plate. But you could see, let's say, Bloom's taxonomy fits the pyramid thing. Most of us now at this point have seen or heard or been exposed to that more than once. So you yourself consumed infographic information and maybe tap back to that often to know how to use those. Anatomical things. Well, in our A&P lab, we don't do dinosaurs, but obviously other organs and things like that, using anatomical things where you're going to do call outs to special features. Then even thinking about how you can turn things into those GIFs. That's where we get into that multimedia aspect of it. So again, I'll provide the presentation and you guys can kind of explore that on your own after this. A great resource to also provide out to students that's super easy to get their brains thinking with it. So this is now where I'm definitely tapping. Seth, this maybe answers your question. Where can I just already get, let's say, pre-made infographics that have been done by graphic designers and look really beautiful? And I can just say, hey, go here, select one and fill it out with this content. So here's a few of them that I love, and I push over to students and say, hey, here's again, you're going to be more engaged if you get choice. Try it out. I think Canva is probably the most popular out of this with them, but there's other ones that Pictochart, Venngage. There's another one called info.am, info.am is another one. And I have a nice resource I found here that actually gives you a comparison of some of these, and you'll get that with my presentation too. It actually compares Canva and Pictochart. What would be ways you'd want to use them? Are they free? Do they have collaboration? I can say that's a key reason I like Canva, is it does have a collaboration feature if you push them out to work into groups. I also like share features with that product, but I gave you a resource to kind of be able to peruse on your own with that one. Then I'm going to take a pause before I go to what's going to be like my favorite part, is actually like showing you, hey, I've done it, I've tried it, and here's how it's working. But before I do that, I want to know if there's any questions that anybody has.
Heather, I have a question.
Go ahead, Ava.
So are you giving those assignment in the class or as a homework or home assignment or something like that? Because it takes time sometimes to create even a simple infograph.
Yeah, you asked actually a great question. And I will do both. And you can be surprised if you have been role modeling this enough throughout your class and exposing them enough. I actually just did it with my patho students last week. They had 15 minutes only to create a 1-minute clinical scenario video that then had to have a 30-second pause and then have an infographic answer reveal to it. So they were assigned a topic, they had to demonstrate and role play it out, and they had to then have an infographic reveal as the answer. I gave them 15 minutes to do that whole thing, Ava. So I think you'd be surprised if you use some of these resources and you've been demonstrating them enough along the way and empowering them to realize, don't overthink this. I just want you to create. They actually will engage with it pretty good. Now, I used that assignment very formatively, right? Where I didn't really have anything other than, and I call them in my class quality learning checks. That one was very low point, low stakes, easy formative assessment, because my goal with that one was to expose them to my expectations. And so I'm about to show you in a second. Now I did that activity last week. What is my expectation of them in 2 weeks? Because now my expectations changed and I am going to give them that time to have more of that metacognition, more of that critical thinking, and kind of think deeper about it. So I'm going to show that here in a second, Ava, but that was a great question. I think that you can go both ways with it. Shannon, did you have a question? Any other questions? All right, so as I mentioned, I just was doing this with my students 2 weeks ago. I gave them this quick assignment. Now, here's where they're at. And so this is what I've created in Brightspace. I've used this assignment more than once. And so here's maybe the notes I would take if I was a faculty listening to this. Think about a topic you are bored with yourself, right? The one you're tired of teaching. You are exhausted out with it. Turn it into this type of formative assignment so it not only becomes more interesting to you again, but maybe more interesting to them, because we need to be realistic about if we're bored teaching it, they're probably bored hearing us. So I have a couple of areas. The other tip would be, what's the most challenging? Because my end goal with doing this too is I'm creating a curation of material. I am now not having to do all of the work. What the students submit becomes a curated repository that is shared out for everybody to study off of. So they want practice, they want this stuff, then you create it and share it rather than me do that. This pivot of we should be facilitators in that learning journey. We don't have to be spoon feeders in that learning journey. So you'll see I have some good guidelines out here. That work must be original. They cannot just go like Google infographic over this, click, and completely steal it. They can, however, maybe use, let's say, Canva or Pictochart or Venn to get a template. I'm fine with that, but the content that goes into it must be original. Then from a creativity standpoint, I tell them it does have to have creative elements. Like if this is just like color and words on a page, blah, boring, right? That's boring for me, that's boring for you. There better be some pictures and this better somehow draw me in and be interesting. The other thing is a good infographic, a rule of thumb is you should understand it in under a minute. So really even 30 to 40 seconds. So that clarity piece becomes huge. It needs to not be too muddied. It needs to have good clarity to it. And then here's where I go into Mayor's multimedia work is I ask them, give me critical thinking beyond. I want you to place some thoughtful choices of some additional materials in there for your peers. Your peers want maybe YouTube videos because they're seeking them out themselves. They're consuming educational content on TikTok and on Instagram. So, hey, you saw something you thought was cool, find it. Sometimes I'll even tell them like, hey, maybe you need to let me see it if I think it has value. Like I will do a little kind of preview of stuff sometimes, but then place some linking in there. The other big ask that they want practice questions. How many of you are like exhausted by providing those? I'm exhausted by making those worksheets. I'm exhausted by providing them. And there's only so many ways that I can now, let's say, skin that pig. So, hey, let's have them do the work. If they have the topic, come up with the questions. So turn it into then gamification. They like that. It's accessible and it's mobile. So this is the structuring of what an assignment looks like for me. You'll see I also have created a rubric. So here is now my rubric for them. I'm expecting that they hit those main things. They have content that conveys the requirements of my mechanisms, my clinical connections. They give me fantastic creativity. It lays out well and further stimulates study. It has good organization that someone could in that 30 to 40 second time frame understand. And then they do make sure that they give me some multimedia element to go beyond. So let's take a look at what some of it's look like. I now have Google folder after Google folder of shared folders of curated content. So this curated folder happens to be neuromusculoskeletal infographic content. So let's just do a quick kind of cursory overview. I want you guys to go to the chat feed for me. And I'm not even going to go in so you can see them closer. I want you just seeing like the overlook of this. There's a decent amount of them in here. Go to the chat feed for me and tell me what you think about these. Are they interesting to you? Would you study from them? Do you like them? What do you like about them before you even see them closer? So I want to hear your thoughts. Like give me just a quick kind of thought into that chat. Like, how does this stimulate you? Is it interesting to you? Would it be something you would follow up on if the information came to you in this way? So I want to know, like, what are the words that come to your mind? What are thoughts that you maybe have about it? And so Shannon's like, great for a visual learner. I agree. Even a read write, they're going to be able to kind of concisely get things. I even like the doodles, Jill. I'm with you. I think it makes it fun, right? It makes it interesting for them. If they feel like it's a little bit fun, maybe they will engage a little bit more. Melissa, how you're like the accommodations with trouble fall. Yeah, so you have a good point. You can be sure that you have them make an actual like script of the content on it. That's going to require some extra work for them, right? You also could make sure that there is a hyperlink on it where they narrate the content. So you can provide those types of changes for it. Also then even putting a video into it. That cognitive overload, Spencer, I completely agree. This helps with that cognitive overload. And again, Seth, you made the comment, yeah, there's a lot of them because I've been curating for a while, right? And so I beg, borrow, and steal at the moments that I want to now with this. And so I'm going to chunk these into my own lectures at this point and say, oh, we studied this topic. Hey, go look at this. This is fantastic for you. So there's some in here that are better than others. I think that's also a reality. So let's look and maybe explore a few that I think do add some kind of fun elements. So here's this myasthenia gravis one. They were super cute with this. The hyperlinks on it are really great, cute little videos with it to kind of make sense of neurotransmitter release and what that looks like. And you can see with this one, they didn't have to do any drawing. This was a student who felt like, I don't think I'm creative like that. I can't draw. I don't know how to do hand lettering. And so I talked to him and I said, hey, that's okay. Let's go to one of the other sites I gave you and see if you can't use some of the information out there. And then they did a great job of, I said, hey, when I say it needs to be multimodal, create also research information here. Give them something else that they could look into. So they did a great job of kind of chunking down with these. And then I loved how they used another little like, hey, here's what a tensilin test actually looks like. Once you have studied this and you want to know how do they diagnose that again, that you could explore that a little bit further. So I thought that that was definitely a fun one. Here's another great one. This student was very visually talented with their own abilities with kind of hand lettering with this, and even doing some kind of free form drawing that you see. So they captured some clip arts and they modified them in their own way by being able to use Procreate. I think they use Notability a little bit. You can see how they add that fun little spin here of like, hey, click that link, go ahead and check this out. They had a couple of great ones with that tendon issues, bursitis issues, and providing a quiz. I also thought it was super fun here. They have the little kind of GIF look on here now, like, all right, now listen up, right? For what is the key things to think about with prevention. So super fun there, very creative for how they kind of approached it. And so this one, more of kind of a mind mapping approach where they centralized their topic. They went out kind of graphically to provide some key information, and definitely wanted to emphasize here, because I had talked about it in class, like what would be that manifestation? How are you going to know some of those things? And so you talk and guide to them, like when you graphically create things, you have to know where you want to place that central focus and that central emphasis. What's the thing that you think is the most important? And so with mind mapping, that's key, so that maybe things that are a little periphery, they kind of change sizing with them. So I thought that that was a really good one too. So you can see multitude of examples. I have folders of these different things over different topics. And so the value becomes, I don't have to now do some of that hard creation anymore. They're now doing some of that creation for me. They're engaged in it and they find it interesting. So what do you guys think? Any thoughts with that? Melissa's like hyperlink, the narration is good. Absolutely, health policy assignment. Yes, rather than just a voiceover, have them see if they couldn't even do that. So peer evaluation. That is something, Gina, I would say I'm definitely interested in exploring more with these, is adding even a component to it that rather than me use my own rubric I created to grade these, have them actually turn around and use the rubric with each other to see how that kind of formulates out. And maybe I choose to use the peer evaluation rubric guide as the grade, or maybe I choose to use that as a formative teaching tool to maybe show them how to progress with these and maybe make them a little stronger in the future if we repeat using the strategy. Anybody else have any great thoughts? All right, well, I like to make good use of people's time. Hopefully this was a good use of your time. And I'm gonna go ahead in a moment and paste the link to my presentation into the chat feed. So if you wanna copy and kind of grab that, I encourage you to do that. But I really do kind of have an ask of you. I would like to see your homework from this. So I want you to pick a topic. I wanna see you first create an infographic on a topic that you can role model out to the students. I want to see it. I think it would be interesting for us to start creating a repository together of these things, because then we can even share across programs and be able to role model in different ways with how maybe different lenses of study or focus or programs maybe want to think about some of that. I mean, a key thing that I even think of, like Shannon seeing you, is a soap note. Soap notes are very dry. So how could a soap note become more interesting? That then they maybe, as they're having to actually be in clinic, because you and I have done that and had to fill a lot of those out, that they do have something graphically to maybe think about when they're doing those things. So I'm going to go ahead and place my link out here. I'll stay on in the end if there's any questions that people have, or if they just want to talk about something with it. I am totally interested. There is my link. with it, but I would love to see where your homework goes with this, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I totally would love to be able to chat about these things. Can we chat about a journal article? Absolutely, we could do a submission. I have had some of your MOT students do some of this stuff. So I'm definitely interested and willing to do more of that with them. So we can absolutely have that conversation. Mark also has placed the Qualtrics on here. So remind yourself, click that link. You want to get credit for attending for sure.
Thank you, Heather.
But go ahead and copy the link here so you have my presentation. And again, reach out if you have any questions. I would be happy to chat on this. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Heather. Fantastic work. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very exciting.
Hey, Heather, it's Melissa. My webcam's looking at the side of me. Hold on. Question. So I have a journal article submission for OT practice, and I was envisioning it's a process article where I'm discussing a process that I'm recommending other people utilize.
Sure.
And I was thinking it could have a graphic with it. But do you think that publications are open to things like this coming with? Is that going to be something that they would like? Have you seen it anywhere?
I feel like yes. I think so more and more with some of the publication stuff, Melissa, even some case study stuff that I've been seeing that you're seeing. And maybe it's because I live in the land of patho a little bit too. But I feel like a lot of times anymore, I see a lot of things that would be like patho-based diagrammatic stuff that's going in with those. And I think original work that ends up being something that's easy, especially in a practice-based study, Melissa.
Right.
Something that's easy that they could turn around, physically even use.
Yeah, that's what I want it to be like. You need to do A before B before C.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Heather, I have a question.
Yes, Lori.
And maybe this is something that we would have to sit down and talk about, but my question is, you talked about like introducing these things to students so that then they can do some of the stuff. And I guess I'm just curious about just in general, how you use these in your own present. Like I understand how to have students use them for assessment, but how do you use them in your teaching?
Yeah, we can definitely have a further conversation on it. Like the easiest way would be to say, I would totally invite you and Lori, come attend one of my classes too. Absolutely. And Seth has been with me. He's seen plenty of my classes with stuff. I would definitely say I am never anymore. I've even gotten to the point, I don't even ever show a PowerPoint presentation during class. So what types of materials do I show? This is the types of materials that I show. And so how am I talking? I'm talking in this way with them. It's all an integrated conversation and a dialogue. It is not a structured, facilitated lecture. That is now because I'm completely to the point, even whether it is a residential class or an online class with a flipped pedagogical method. So it takes maybe some legwork to be at the point that this does become a consistent way that your teaching is going to look, if that makes sense, because yep. I expect that they came into class and they already listened to me do the quote lecture. Mm-hmm. So that time that they're with me now is we would be doing an exercise like this, literally to make sure they engage at that deeper level. They ignite that critical thinking, that we're working on those higher order thinking processes. We're practicing with stuff that they're formulating the answers themselves. So it's kind of like a ground day one expectation would be what I say. I feel like it's more of like a tonal expectation with my teaching. And Mark has seen me teach a lot too, and I think Ava has. So I don't know, Seth, Mark, Ava, do you have something like, it's hard to sometimes view yourself and know how that looks, but is that, would you say that's accurate or not?
Yeah, I think the other thing is setting that expectation and them knowing that when they come into class, they're going to need X, Y, Z resources in order to do the activities. They have them and they bring them. And that's So you have a little bit of a conversation, you lead into the activity, and then you say go. And that's really what she does.
Yeah.
What I love is the expectation that they've done the homework.
Yep.
Like there's
Very
so many
strongly.
faculty members say, my students don't do the homework. And what you see then is the faculty member may be reading the PowerPoint to the students. And so why would I bother to watch it the night before if I know that you're going to read it to me? You walk into Heather's class, you better be ready. If you're not, you're going to get eaten alive, and it's going to show, and you're not going to feel good about it.
Well, eating alive, that sounds kind of mean. Like, I don't think it's like a eating alive.
I know,
like,
not eating alive, but you know what I'm saying is that you better be ready.
Yeah.
You're going to be lost if you're
gonna
not.
be lost,
Yeah.
and you're not going to catch on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I feel like Lori, I would almost say, I think that it does take time too. It's not as though I do think students don't initially feel uncomfortable with this as a pedagogical approach. I do think they initially feel very uncomfortable with this. And so the other thing I would say, I wouldn't maybe say eat alive, like, hopefully not that.
I'm sorry. That wasn't the term I was
I
looking
would
for.
agree to the idea. I think they are uncomfortable with it at first, but here's the part that I do think I am okay with. I'm okay to take the discomfort. And I own that very authentically to them. And again, Seth has seen me teach a lot. Like, I don't even shy away from that conversation with them where I'm like, hey, it's hard. It's okay. We're going to keep trying and it will continue to get better. And I have just a lot of like that grace-based conversation with them. Maybe you're expecting too much right now, and maybe you need to focus a little bit more. And so I do think you have to know how to have that conversation. And so even with this presentation today, you're going to be better having that conversation if you know the tips and tricks of how to ease their fears with it. And so I do feel like I feel pretty comfortable in my skin with that too, to like take the feedback of, but I can't draw, Dr. Henrichs. Say, I don't care. Here's a clear sticky note. Copy and paste a picture and then kind of go from there.
Thanks.
Ava, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. What is your recommendation to take the first baby steps for the new people? So how did you start? Because obviously right now you are already a master. And how did you start?
Yeah, so I would definitely say it was the tip I put in here. My baby step tip was I was bored teaching some of these things. And so it was it was like the reflective practice of where was my boredom, or also where did I think the hardest topics were. And I started literally only on a topic level, Ava. Like the only way that now, like let's say that Google folder you saw where I'm like literally spanning almost all neuromusculoskeletal concepts, that's a over time curation. That wasn't a, hey, right now. It was a start maybe slow and everybody gets the same topic and we see how it looks. And then maybe we even do like, let's say a voting. Which one do you guys want to study from the most? And that's going to be the one that is, Seth, to your point, like I don't create study guides and you know that about me. I give them like a topic listing. So, hey, you want a study guide? You guys all create on this topic, whichever one we vote we like the best. That's now the one that's on the study guide. So making them maybe do more of that legwork with it. But I would start with what's a topic? What's a topic you're bored with or that you think is one of the hardest things? And just start there. Do you have another question, Ava?
No, I don't. I don't know how to switch it off.
Oh, lower hand. Yep. You can raise and lower.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah, Gina, the infographics. Yeah, the Pikachuka the Pikachuka is like essentially placing graphic information into that short snippeted video, right? And I think Tara Whitmire had talk on Pikachuka with that. Yeah, and I would say Pikachuka, I would maybe use in a different way, if that makes sense. I feel like that's a good thing to engage the idea that they love TikTok. Pikachuka, I think, is a nice way to kind of seamlessly go between those two. They love to watch like short 10-second video feeds of things. So absolutely, I think that's a way you can kind of blend stuff. The concern I would say is like infographics do still have a decent amount of text, and Pikachuka is mainly meant to be just visual, right? A quick framework of visuality and with shorter word formatting with it. So I think that would be super cool. Very cool. I'd love to hear. Yeah, rubric and a podcast. Awesome. Beth, sounds like we should be podcasting, right?
Oh, who's doing that?
Submit some more. You've been working on that, Gina. That's a good suggestion. Yes. And I honestly feel like I submitted this to Mark as a topic. I do think that this could be, let's say, like a multi-layered session.
Absolutely.
With some stuff to be able to just explore a little deeper into each of those, have faculty have a hands-on to create. We just knew that the Create Lab was under creation itself. So hence we're in a virtual formatting with it, but I'm totally open to the idea of doing some follow-ups with this. And so I can certainly talk with Mark about that. Absolutely.
And that might be a great piece to open that lab with. And so I'll kind of follow on. Thank you for that opening. The Create Lab, we are expecting to open the afternoon of the 11th, right after Forum. We'll probably have a grand opening. I'm expecting furniture any day now, and we've got all the equipment here. So we're going to have an exciting lab for you to all work in and create some of this. So this might be a great workshop to host in there to kind of open and kick things off. So great idea. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Seth, don't feel too overwhelmed. You know how to get a hold of me. You know I got lots of examples.
It's overwhelming regardless.
Yep, it's all recorded, so we can now slow it down to about 10th speed and catch up on all those things that Heather flew through. So, and you've got the Create team here to help, Heather here to help. So let us know how we can get you going.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for your time. I hope it was a useful session for you. Have a great afternoon.
Great job, Heather. Thanks.
See ya. Nice to meet you,
Thanks,
Spencer.
Heather.
Hopefully we'll connect here soon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully that wasn't too
Excellent
overwhelming.
Nope. It was
Exciting.
excellent. I loved it.
So, all right. See you, Mark.
Thanks. Have a good one.